Rupert Lowe did an interview with the Daily Mail where he was calling for reform to be properly structured, but he said a lot worse than that. He said it's too early to know whether Nigel will deliver the goods. He says he has messianic qualities, but will they translate into sage leadership? I don't know. And then Lowe warned that the Reform UK moves beyond its reliance of Farage. He may leave before the next election, who knows? He said that we have to change from being a protest party led by the Messiah into a structured party with a front bench. He said that Nigel must learn to delegate and not everything has to go through Nigel Farage. Quite scathing. Like, most people aren't this open, especially in a really closed party of 5 MPs. But then later that day, after these remarks came out from the Daily Mail, Farage was on Talk TV taking questions, and people were asking him questions about the interview. Farage said that, it kind of looks like he might want to be Prime Minister, and also said that, he hopes that he's going to be at the next election with Reform, but with his tone, he might not be. It's been 7 months. I thought they were going to last at least a little bit longer than this. But anyway, Callum, Reform, Civil War, Rupert Lowe, what do you think?
When have Reform not been in civil war? Let's be realistic. We've had all the thing with Ben Habib. We've had all the thing with Farage coming along and ousting Tice without any say and taking over the leadership. Let's be clear. Reform UK is nothing without Nigel Farage. One of the reasons that they did so well in the general election is because Nigel Farage came along before the election and said, "Ha ha! I'm back. I said I was retiring." It was like, "Oh, peekaboo, I'm here all along." And everybody talked about it because Nigel Farage is the guy that the media write about all the time. Nigel Farage is the guy who blows his nose and it's front page of all the papers, right? Nigel Farage is the guy that's been invited more times than I think anybody else onto Question Time, although Richard Tice is on Question Time this evening. Nigel Farage is the guy who was the poster boy for the Brexit campaign. And also, Nigel Farage is the guy who, in some recent polling that I've seen in recent weeks, was deemed by the British public to be more favourable for Prime Minister than Keir Starmer. With as much as I can't stand the guy, his stance towards Tommy Robinson is actually a very good political decision to distance himself from Tommy Robinson, because if Reform want to appeal to more normal, normal, as if Reform voters are not normal. Reform voters are normal people. But, if Farage wants Reform to appeal to a wider range of voters, let's say, then he absolutely does the right thing to not support Tommy Robinson, because Tommy Robinson is a much more divisive figure than even Farage is. And I think there are some within Reform that don't understand that. And you know what? Great. If it means that they eat themselves alive and it all falls apart, I'm all for that. But if they actually want to do well, I can't see how they can do that without Farage, because he's the character. He's got the charisma. He's, unfortunately, among many, he's got the likability. He's got the ability to be able to stand in front of a TV camera and speak from the heart in a way that feels natural, normal. He made a big thing during the election campaign about the fact that everyone else needs a script and he doesn't need a script because he just speaks in common sense. He'd be absolutely disaster for the country. God help everybody and anybody if Reform formed a government and Farage was at the head of it. But if that's what they want to do, I don't see how they can do it without him. I really don't. And this whole Tommy Robinson thing, if the idea is to get rid of Farage and endorse Tommy, well, I'd like to see them do it, because, UKIP fell apart when Farage quit the party. And we know why. Tommy Robinson caused many problems within the, for supporters of the English Defence League. Where Tommy Robinson goes, disaster follows. And where Nigel Farage leaves, disaster follows.
What's interesting about all of this is that we know that Nigel Farage is just as right as Tommy Robinson and just as right as Rupert Lowe. It's about obviously how you control your image. But the image that Farage is trying to give off is that he's actually like of the left of Tommy Robinson, which is a weird thing to say. If you actually like take a step back, if we think about this for a second, that means, you know, Tommy Robinson is very much in line with people like Donald Trump, with the AFD, with all these far right parties. And Farage is actually trying to position himself on the left of all these right-wing figures, because obviously Musk is behind Tommy. Obviously, all these interconnected far-right parties who all network with each other, most of them about Tommy. There was a conservative conference in the UK a few weeks ago called the ARC Conference, and Tommy Robinson was mentioned there multiple times. There was multiple far-right figures there from around the world. And what a weird world to live in, where we're now living in a world where we're talking about who's on the left and the right of people like Farage and Tommy Robinson. It's quite odd. I think what's also interesting out of all of this is that obviously within the last week, Keir Starmer's got a massive bump in his approval rating. We're still waiting for more data to come out because of his handling of Ukraine and everything that's going on there. And obviously it's debatable amongst lots of people whether he's actually done a good job. But regardless of that, the perception is that he's done a good job. That's what many people in the public feel, and it's giving him a boost. And then obviously added with the Reform Party infighting, it's almost like a double blow for Farage. So it'll be interesting to see some polling perhaps in a few weeks to see how all of this goes down. And again, like Reform have been pretty silent on like the Ukraine issue. They've been asked questions about it in public, but almost kind of, you know, distance themselves from it, while, you know, everybody is constantly talking about, you know, Ukraine in the US and Europe. Farage is just on Twitter talking about immigrants, which again, interesting. He's not really finding a way to kind of steal the limelight right now. He's struggling. And now the only limelight that he's getting is that Reform are fighting amongst each other. And we're only 7 months in.
It'll be interesting to see how Tice performs tonight on Question Time as well, I think, because obviously I imagine that, you know, Ukraine will probably come up. I imagine that there'll be a question about Trump. I mean, I'm guessing here, but just thinking of what's gone on in the last week or so, there's certainly going to be a question about one or the other, I would imagine. And it will be very interesting to see how he performs, you know, there on those issues.
Support independent media, support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you. Turn left.